Today, we're going to be talking about Athanasius' work on the Incarnation. And I think it's important before we get there to really understand Arius, or at least what Arius was accused of. So I have a short video that I'm using a whiteboard that will help try to depict where Arius is coming from, at least the logic that Arius is accused when it comes to trying to understand how the Father and the Son relate to each other. So we're going to sit back and enjoy this. Why don't we flip? I hope it's helpful. Hello. In this segment we're going to discuss Arianism, but I've put that in quotation marks because we don't have time to talk about Arius himself and the actual history as it can be understood. Instead, we're going to talk about what he was accused of teaching, Arianism, or probably more precisely, subordinationism. And the reason he's accused of teaching subordinationism is because in a way he subordinated the Son to the Father. In some way or another, he said that the Father was fully God and the Son was a little bit of a lesser God, or maybe a younger God. But to understand how he did this, let's talk about our timeline of all human history. Imagine we drew a timeline of all human history that began in the beginning with Genesis 1:1. We could say this was 10,000 years ago, or we could say this was 10 zillion years ago, however you want to date it. And then when we think about the end of human history, we're talking about the Omega, where all things are summed up in Christ. Christ, of course, being, at least theologically, the center of history. I like to think we're somewhere right here toward the end. So the question for Arian is, what was God doing before in the beginning? He knows one thing. He knows that God was not alone, because not only is the Father there at the beginning, but also in the beginning was the Word. And he knows this from John 1:1-3. So if you have the Father and the Son there at the beginning, then what was God doing before in the beginning? Let's back our timeline up to about 10,000 or 10 zillion and 1. At this point, Arius knows that there was some point, whether it was 1 year, 2 years, a million years before in the beginning, that the Father had begotten the Son, or God spoke forth the Word. In a sense, this, whatever date we were to give here, is Jesus' birthday. So to review, we have Father who begat the Son, and then we have the Father and the Son in the beginning creating the whole world. Now, if we were to continue to back up this timeline, let's say to 10,000 or zillion and 2, then there would be a point where you simply had the Father, but not the Son. For Arius, there was a time when the Son was not. Now to try to figure out why this is wrong, why is this some form of heresy, an ism, Arianism, you're usually tempted to try to find some proof text. What is it about in the beginning that we can show Arius must be wrong? But for Athanasius, and for what became the Orthodox party, the answer is not found in the beginning, but here at the center of history. The answer is that if Arius' version of the beginning is correct, then it completely changes the story of salvation itself. Instead of having God, Emmanuel, with us on the cross, we have, as it were, some lesser God, some first creature of God who's been sent to do God's dirty work. Arius himself was accused of saying that the Son was a second God, a deuteros theos, and he also claimed that the Word, or the Son, was not fully God. If he's divine in some sense, for Arius, because he's godly, or godlike, that's not enough for Athanasius. For Athanasius, this must be Emmanuel, the true God, the full God who is with us. Even though he's distinct from the Father, he is the Son, or the Word of God. Nevertheless, they are distinct but equal. That is, they're both equally God. And so for Arius' opponents, like Athanasius, they're going to insist that Jesus is fully God. Now the next question we'll have to deal with is, if Jesus is fully God and Arius is wrong, then what does it mean to say that Jesus is as fully transcendent as the Father? Especially, what does it mean when we have God, the Word, fully transcendent, and yet also finitely present, incarnate, and on the cross? Well, we haven't exactly been fair to Arius, but at least we have a sense of what Athanasius thought he was arguing against. So I hope that was helpful. You know who wasn't impressed with Arius? Flip. Where are you, Flip? You don't approve.